I'm going to expand upon a couple of things from my earlier video. First, I want to start on Nikola Tesla, on who the man was, his relevance to history. Now, he was born in that part of Europe that at one time was known as Yugoslavia, back in the mid 1990s with the breakup of the Soviet Union. Yugoslavia broke up, and that part of Yugoslavia where Tesla was born was is known as Serbia. But anyway, he was born there back in the 1800s. Tesla had worked in Europe for a period of time. He'd come to the United States and worked for um, Thomas Edison for a period of time. Now, Edison and Tesla had some type of gentleman's agreement that if Tesla had improved some of Edison's uh, inventions, that Edison would give Tesla his own laboratory after about 6 months. Anyway, after the 6 months, Tesla had gone to Edison and asked for his laboratory, and Edison said, "Dude, you just don't understand, our American humor." So Tesla had left. Tesla went out on his own for a little bit. He worked for George Westinghouse for a while. He had been a number of things for George Westinghouse. He'd improved upon the electric light bulb. He had invented the polyphase, the three-phase motor, the number of things that Tesla had invented that the credit's kind of loosely given to other people, but Tesla had the patent on them. A lot of stuff with radio electronics early on was giving the credit was given to Marconi, but it was actually Tesla that had invented. Of course, I'm sure the patents run out now because it's been over 100 years ago. But anyway, he said Elon Musk had named his car company Tesla in honor of Nikola Tesla, and why Elon Musk doesn't come out periodically and explain who Nikola Tesla was, I don't quite get. And Elon Musk should periodically come out and explain who Nikola Tesla was and his relevance to history. Now, there's something that I at some point in time I might disclose, my interest in Nikola Tesla, or I might not. It's deeply personal to me, but I do find the dude interesting. Now, there's a lot of stuff that Tesla had come up with that the guy was a genius, but he was a mad genius, and not everything that Tesla come up with would have worked. There's a lot of to come up with that I don't think would have ever worked. But you don't become a prolific inventor without a few failures. That's just the way things go. But yeah, I guess I find the dude extremely fascinating. And he died in obscurity. He died in a flop house in New York. You know, well, the FBI had and seized all his work. They declared him he'd become an American citizen. He'd lived in the United States for many years, but when Tesla died, the FBI declared that he was how do you phrase it? Um, it was a phrase that they used, but they said he was enemy. Oh, I can't think of the word there now. But anyway, the FBI had used that to seize his work. There was some of the he'd come up with what they call a death ray, which I don't think really would have worked. But like I said again, he had all kind of ideas. Most of them worked, and not all of them did. But anyway, supposedly the FBI still has a lot of his inventions locked up somewhere. Of course, that might just be an urban rumor too. You don't know. Like I said, at some point in time, I might disclose to my YouTube audience why I find the guy fascinating. I think Elon Musk could come out and also explain to his public, the people that follow him, why he named his car company Tesla in honor of Nikola Tesla. Now, this is something completely unrelated. Now, this is I've referenced this book a number of times. I finally did finish it. I've covered that. I really have. I need to do a complete overview of the book. I'll give you just an overview. Um, the book starts in the time. It's fiction. It's presented as fiction, but it's one of the things that historically accurate fiction of historical accuracy, something like that. But anyway, this guy is one of the pilots from the Berlin airlift. If you remember back in the 50s or 60s, the Soviet Union is trying to choke off, I think it was West Berlin. We airlifted a lot of food in there. If you remember JFK's speech, Ich bin ein Berliner, where he's telling the citizens of Berlin, I've got your back, that type of thing. But anyway, this story starts with this pilot that's part of this Berlin airlift, where this guy is on his off time, he wanders around the city, meets up with people. Of course, this is an American pilot, but, he his family is of German origin, and he does speak German. He gets to meet this one chick, falls in love with her, and they make plans to. He's gonna he's gonna move her, you know, you know, marry her, and then take her to the United States, where they'll live and have a family here in the U.S. And of course, her family hates the idea because there's still a lot of animosity at this. This you can remember this is just right after the war. Still a lot of animosity on both sides. His family hates it, her family hates it. But anyway, before he goes through with the marriage, he ends up getting in this wreck. He's in his aircraft wreck. He's not killed, but he's crippled up pretty good. So he writes her this letter. He tells her, so look, I can't be a decent husband to you. Let's call the marriage off. She writes him back agreeing to this, and but she doesn't tell him that she's pregnant. She doesn't tell him that she's gonna have a little daughter. But she goes ahead and has a daughter. She goes ahead and raises, gets married, has as a family, and the daughter goes ahead. They all know that. The daughter knows that her father is an American, but doesn't know much about him. Now, this is all there's other sub stories in the book. There's a number of other stories that are kind of related to life at that time. It's not just this one family. But anyway, the daughter goes ahead. She grows up. She gets married, has a family of her own. The granddaughter. This is right by the time the granddaughter's in school. This is back in the late 1980s. By the time that this granddaughter is going to school, she knows her grandfather's an American, and she says, "Look, I believe this guy is still alive. I'm gonna call him and just find out what how's his life and stuff." And just I want to find out more about my grandfather. And she calls him up. This is just before the fall of the Berlin Wall. Just right at the time that the Soviet Union was breaking up, into Russia. But anyway, this guy gets this call in the middle of the night. He still speaks pretty good German. But anyway, he's this girl's calling him in the middle of the night, and he has no idea that this family even exists. But anyway, this girl, first he thought it was a scam. He was talking to this girl. She says, "I'm from," I don't remember, I think she was living in East Berlin at that time. She was telling him, "I'm your granddaughter." First, the guy thinks it's some type of scam, and then and then the granddaughter goes, "Do you remember Greta from Berlin in 1945?" The guy thinks back and he said, "Oh yeah," and he said, and he goes, "Oh my God, I've got a family that I had no idea I even had." But anyway, at the very end of the book, she gets him over, to Berlin right at the time of fall of the Berlin Wall, and sometime I'll relate, the ending of the book because it's something I just find very, 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 very fascinating. They're going through the. If you remember, because I was a young adult, and when this was '89, this was I was in my mid-30s at that time. But anyway, just a very, very interesting time to see all this come down. Okay, ciao. Auf Wiedersehen.